Okay, people. So there's a new horror flick coming to your small screens, right? And it is called Autumn Road. Now, this is written and directed by Riley Cusick. Yep. It's produced by Xander McCabe through his Last Motel production company. All right. It is executive produced by Eric Floyd and Mark Schultz, with some help from Alejandro Rios. The music is from Brandon Potel. Cinematography is Carson Bailey. Bailey also handles the editing. Andrea Zuniga is production design. Makeup is Sarah Brill and Samantha McDaniel. Yeah, that's most of the roles right there. Now, our cast. Right, so let's start off with young Winnie, who is played by Maddie Lee Hendricks. Then young Charlie is played by Ranger Leaway, and young Vincent dear, pardon me, is Jonas Leeway. Right? Their dad, Henry, is played by Justin Meeks. Then we have the older Charlie and Vincent, both played by Riley Cusick. Winnie's sister, Laura, is played by Lorelei Linklater. We have Kennedy, played by La Park Lincoln. Molly, played by Jordan Wright. Lou, who runs the CAF, she's played by Kerry McCormick. Then there is Hunter, who is played by George Welder. I think that's the gist of it. Hunter's friend is played by Kenneth Fisher. Yeah, and Jack is played by Buddy Love. Yes. So yeah, that's the cast. Now the gist of the film, people, is this: 10 years after a young girl goes missing on Halloween night, her grief-ridden sister returns to their hometown to make peace with her unsolved past. Along the way, she becomes entangled with two indiscrepant identical twins from her childhood who now run the town's roadside haunted house. With nowhere else to go, she is drawn deeper and deeper into the world of scares, secrets, and enchanting house of horrors. While one twin pulls her closer, the other's threats and scare tactics escalate to a breaking point where he must decide what lines he's willing to cross. At the same time, her connection with her sister is growing as she starts to unearth new information about who she was and what happened that night all those years ago. The three haunted souls soon find themselves on a melancholic journey for truth, set against the backdrop of an approaching Halloween season and the anniversary of her sister's disappearance. Yeah, that's a little weird, because that's not really what went down. I wonder who the fuck wrote that. That's odd. Right? I say that because, the film starts off and we hear someone talking about haunted houses, scares, bumps in the night, right? Then we kind of cut to that same talk, that same conversation, but it's Henry talking to his kids and some staff, right? It's because he runs the local haunted house, right? It's Halloween. So yeah, everything's like that. Now, he's got two kids and young Winnie, who's a regular at the house. She's over, but she hangs out with the two boys. Now, one of the boys, Charlie, he doesn't really want to get involved this year, right? We hear that his brother, he likes Winnie, and so he's told Charlie to back off because she likes Charlie. But, young love and whatnot. And yeah, things move in directions before we then jump forward in time. Now, one thing, right, I did find a little odd. I think there's a fun story here, but some of the execution doesn't quite work, right? Now, from what I know, everyone with an allergy, they let you know, and especially with kids. As a growing up, I remember there was a kid that had a bad allergy, and right? It was a thing. No one didn't know. But also, you know what to do if something happens, right? It's like go get the parent or speak to an adult because they will have a EpiPen and call hospital, right? It's steps. There's steps. You know this. So it does make a situation a little bit odd in how it all played out, right? But we're in the future, and yeah, the boys now run the haunted house, but it seems to be this bigger thing because there's a fun fair there and just all this stuff. But while Charlie, he seems the more grounded, and Vincent is odd. Vincent is very odd. So we have that. We also then we cut to a girl. She's auditioning for a play, a film, and the audition. It's not the worst audition I've ever seen, but she feels it went terribly. Goes home. She's talking to her friend, and her friend's like, "Yo, we should just make a film together." It's like a friend acts as well, and she's like, you find it a lot easier. You get roles a lot easier, right? But a friend's like, yo, let's just make something ourselves, right? It was then odd how she handled a phone call, which she didn't even know what the phone call was. That was a crazy thing. It'd be like, yo, don't you want to know what that is before you? But hey ho. Now, they've got plans, all of this, but again, something goes amiss, which is the thing that sends her home, right? She doesn't go home, but she's just like, oh, it's the anniversary of my dead sister, missing sister, even. She goes home because something's happened, and it's just like, yeah, she's kind of in shock. She doesn't know what to do. That's why she goes home, right? And yeah, it's a little just then what we see her do when she's home, right? But she's hanging out with, the twins rather than anything else. She meets him at the cafe where he works as well, because he works at a cafe too, which you get because haunted houses, they're seasonal. So you would need another job. right? So it, like, all of this, it makes sense. The story makes sense to an extent, but there are just these things in it that don't really work, right? There's one point when two people are talking. Like, one knocks at the door, the other one comes out, shuts the door. They're talking, and then you hear someone say, "Hey, come in. You're letting a draft in." And this is like, you shut the door. Like, no draft can come into your house because you've shut the door. Unless you've got really shitty installation, man. Like, what are you talking about? This is bizarre. You know? So there's all of this, right? I didn't. It's a weird one because the acting isn't terrible, but I don't believe a lot of the emotion that is meant to be there. Right? There's a lot of places where there's meant to be this remorse, this sadness, but it doesn't read. You don't. I For me, I didn't feel that the characters in these situations were going through anything or had any fears or anything like that. It was an odd one, right? You know what I mean? Because look, if some of the things that happened to these motherfuckers happened to anyone else, like, you'd be seeing some other shit, right? You'd be seeing some other shit now, right? The remorse doesn't have to be there, but then you have to have them act in a, like, the script has to be something else. But the way the script is playing, right? There is meant to be sadness, remorse, fear, regret. Like, it's meant to be in some of these scenes, but it just isn't, right? It just isn't, which does make things a little bit odd. A little bit odd, I ain't gonna lie. Right, so there is that. Um, there's a one point, there's this talk of like, oh, evil and good, right? Am I a good person? Am I an evil person? And it's just like, you're not good, right? Come on, man. Like, it's not even a question. You know what you did. Now, although you didn't do the deed, you didn't talk about it, right? You know that's not good. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like, it's weird, right? We get an American History X situation, which, if I remember correctly, in that, homie was held down. In this, no one's held, right? So I would have at least expected the head to move. You know what I mean? Try to get away, at least. But the situation in itself didn't really make any sense because it was just like, wait, why that person? Right? Surely your grief is with someone else if you really know who that person is. And if not, and if you did, why not act sooner? Right? It was just a little bit odd. Like, the friend, now that was bad acting. The friend was bad. But to be honest, the friend didn't have much to do in that instance. Right? So yeah, that was a whole weird thing. Like the park. The park was weird because in this scene didn't need to happen. Or, like, you think, if you're trying to say something, there's other ways of doing it, because the way you're going, you have to divulge everything, especially if it's like, I was told not to say anything. Well, who told you not to say something? Right? It was just a bit like, come on, man. Like, it's not like it happened yesterday. If it happened yesterday, you could understand. But when you've been sitting on these things for so long, right? You would have had to have spoken to the police, just numerous people, probably reporters. So you know how to not give your shit up by this point, right? So it just made there was awkward situations, awkward conversations that you just thought, that doesn't need to be there, or it doesn't feel like it would play out like that, you know? So there was all of this. And the end was odd. Firstly, I'm like, I think you can tell a voice, right? So the fact it was just like they couldn't understand, the voices couldn't be distinguished was just weird. That was weird. And then it just didn't need to happen. Didn't need to happen because they like didn't know anything. Didn't like there was no knowledge. So it was just like, wait, why are you doing a thing when no one knows? Right? It was bizarre. It was bizarre. Now maybe there were some scenes cut, right? Which would make sense with some of this, right? If there were scenes that were cut that would have made other bits a little bit clearer, you know? But yeah, it just got a bit messy. But it just got a bit messy. And then at the very end, you're just like, why would these people be friends? Like, I don't understand. Like, how could there be a fucking friendship? You know what I mean? It's odd. Now, as I said, look, there's a good idea. There is a good idea here. It's just a shame with some of the execution, you know? Some of the execution. But, you know what I mean? I'm just like, listen, I do think it will, you know, it will work for a lot of people. Because it's not the worst thing I've seen. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just like, boy, I'm trying to think of stuff. It's kind of like, you know, because we've looked at a lot of films, right? Um, oh, actually, thinking about it, right? If you enjoyed, oh, what the fuck was that film called? Oh, um, Random Acts of Violence, right? It was on Shudder last year. I think it was on Shudder last year, right? If you enjoyed Random Acts of Violence, I think that kind of works, and or The Call, right? I think they were stronger films, but it kind of works along those lines, I would say. You know, so yeah, if you're fans of those, then I think you might be able to get down to Autumn Road. It's a shame they didn't bring it out a little earlier, you know, to really fit in with Halloween. But hey, you know, don't have to wait till Halloween for a little scary movie, right, people? So if you're in the mood, then you might want to travel down that Autumn